Hello, welcome to the end of a decade. Today we're going to be going over some of my old artworks, but I'm mostly aiming for 2010 and just critique, go over some stuff. I am streaming this currently live. You guys watching it later aren't going to be watching it live, but I swear this happened live on Twitch. If you'd like to follow future Twitch streams, check out the link in the description. I stream 3 days a week. I know critiques can be kind of a sensitive topic to people because I've seen videos of artists who sort of talk down their older artworks to the point where they just really just kind of shit on the old artworks. And so for people who watch these videos and their artworks maybe are at or are around or even under that level that the artist is critiquing or teasing or making fun of, they can kind of feel bad about themselves. And I want you guys to know that this is my own journey. This is my own story. Like everybody's story, their own journey is different. I try not to talk down when I do critiques. Just know that I understand and I get the feeling that it's not fun to watch a critique video and just the entire time they're talking down and just criticizing or in a negative way making fun of their artworks. That's not fun to watch. So I'll try and talk both positives and negatives in a more constructive manner. Hopefully you guys can enjoy that. This might be the first artwork of 2010 and it's called Purple Sunshine and Rainbows. And I did it on lined paper. So first of all, I guess the concept is kind of neat. I like the idea of it. I think I did, for at the time, a good job with the details. I like the hair. I like the mood it kind of gives across. I think there's definitely an emotion happening. The wings are kind of a neat idea. They're sort of falling apart. But I think the biggest thing I could have done that would have made this piece better was just not doing it on computer or not doing it on a lined paper. I guess in some ways you can do some stuff on lined paper and maybe this sort of gives something to the piece to do it on lined paper, but there wasn't any reason I did it on lined paper. And I think, I don't know, the lines are just kind of a bit distracting. Maybe like down here it's okay, but like once you get into the character, the lines are just a little distracting. Other things are just kind of, the clothing folds kind of have no direction. There's no understanding of the weight of the clothing. I just kind of put folds there because I know that there's folds in clothing, but I didn't actually understand what folds are. Is that text on the top? Yeah, this was during school. So again, if I wanted to make this look kind of nicer, not lined paper, and don't scribble and do stuff on the back of it. Like if you want to have a good presentation of your piece, that's probably a good place to start. Because I feel like that's part of it. And I've watched a recent video from Lisa Lockery when she was doing critiques, and presentation does play a role in the artwork. And I think that's a fair thing to critique. But the clothing folds stand out the most to me. There's obviously some anatomy mistakes. I kind of just sort of scribbled things on, not really paying attention. The wings are obviously not accurate to bird wings. I do like the cliff. I think that's pretty cool with it breaking apart. I think the clouds are fine. I think the moon's fine. Like, you know, it's a moon. I mean, I could have done more with it, but I think it would have been too distracting. Obviously, the character is the focus here. My main nitpicks are the lined paper, the text on the back, and the clothing folds. If I had just fixed that, it would have already made this piece like way stronger. Like there's no reason for an art critique to go into absolutely everything that's wrong. That's kind of ridiculous. When you critique something, including to yourself, like you don't want to point out everything. That's too much. You want to focus on just a couple of things. And also don't forget the positives, especially when you're more important than anything, when you're critiquing your old artwork, absolutely find at least one thing, but I'm guarantee you're going to be able to find more if you try hard enough, but find at least one thing positive about it. Trust me, better for your mental health, and it's actually just a generally good thing to do in critiques because you need to know what you're doing right. What direction are you going? That's a way that you want to go. All right, next one. What do we got? Oh, this one. This is February, right? February 14th, but this is artwork of myself and Ari is Alex. Let's see, what can we critique over here? I do like the color, like it's really bright in your face, and that's kind of the point. The one thing that always bothered me though was this pink background. I was trying to emulate another artist who I saw do sort of a bubbly background, and I really liked it, but I didn't understand, like I didn't examine enough how she did it, so I didn't actually do it the way I wanted to here. It's a very specific, you have to know me critique, but I kind of wish I had looked more into, if there's like a style or if there's something you want to try and emulate, definitely I think do a little bit more studying or practice or something beforehand, especially before you do like the big piece that you want to do with it. But I could go again with the clothing folds. I think it's better. I still probably could have done a little bit more into looking more into clothing folds and understanding them a little bit better. Even though they're chibis, excuse me, the anatomy is still a little bit awkward. Like this arm is longer than this arm. I like the hair. I do like the hair here too. Yeah, I do think the texturing and like use of the the markers, I think I did a pretty good job here. It's hard to critique this since it's kind of like chibi, like it's sort of meant to be a little bit silly. Probably could have gotten things a little bit smoother here with the marker, but that's something that just comes with practice. You can kind of see the overlap. I don't know, the neck here looks a little bit strange, but the coat is like blocking it, but his head still looks like it's off-centered. So I probably could have sketched that a little bit better. I don't know, not too much to say on that one. So this is April, and this is an OC of mine. There's a lot going on here with this one. But let's talk about it. Let's go positives first. I do like the emotion. I do like the attempt at having something other than just plain smiley face. Even now, I still do just a lot of the same sort of emotion. And it's not really until like the comic I'm working on, that I actually have something other than just a plain smiling face. So I think it was, good on me for trying to go outside the box there a little bit with different emotions. I do like how I colored the hair. I do like the idea of just sort of having this sort of grip arm, because when you want to express an emotion, having just the face sometimes isn't enough. You can also really push a piece when you add body language to it. And I think having this sort of tense hand adds just a little bit more to it. But yeah, so those are the things I think are working with the piece. So let's get into negatives. This one has a lot for me. The one that stands out the most probably is the hand. I think I should have definitely looked at a reference. I'm pretty sure I didn't on this. So I think not using references kind of hurt this piece. It's a really long thumb, yeah. There's definitely an attempt at perspective, like with the arm sort of coming out towards the camera. Like you can see that I was trying to do that, but because I didn't use a reference, because I didn't actually know what it looked like and I was just guessing, I think that kind of made a big difference. Like if the hand and the arm perspective was more accurate, this would have been an infinitely stronger piece. It's such a pronounced, like a big part of the picture. Like it takes up a lot of attention. There we go. Because it's so incorrect, it's very distracting. If just alone the hand and the arm were better, there's obviously other mistakes in here, but I think just that alone would have made the biggest difference. So having that good, I guess, underpainting or underdrawing of the anatomy, huge difference. Same thing with like the shoulder, the torso, the neck, kind of like there's a lot going on here that I think if the underlying anatomy was stronger. I don't actually know or remember if I sketched the body first or if I just went in with the clothing. I wouldn't be surprised if I just went in with the clothing, but if you want to improve your anatomy, if you want more accurate drawings, if you want things to look a little bit more presentable to a general audience, don't shy away from doing an underdrawing. I know it's extra time put into doing something, but if you just do the face, then do the shirt, do the pants, you're kind of missing a lot of stuff that would help you make a more accurate, presentable, because obviously style and interests and stuff vary. It's a lot of effort, but I think it's effort that pays off, and I think this piece would have been much stronger if I had just alone did that. I mean, I couldn't pick the clothing folds. I think I could have done better shading with the colored pencils in his pants. It's like a lot of this when like little circles are much smoother and look nicer, but for me the biggest thing I would tell myself back then to tackle is the anatomy. Next artwork is also Leo. So this one is April of 2010. I still kind of like this one. I was pretty happy with this one for a very long time. I even liked that hand, and to me nowadays still that hand looks pretty good. Obviously there's mistakes with it, could have done much better. Still I like it. I think it's pretty good. You like the pants? Yeah, I like them too. I like the use of the white highlights. I think it kind of emphasizes the folds a little bit more, but it just adds like a little neat look to it. And I was very proud of that moon. It's still a nice moon. And the socks. I like the socks. I think the pose is kind of cute. I like the bats. I like the idea of the stylization of the bats. I like the style of the wings, like the little spider webs on top of them. The unfortunate thing is that it's actually not canon. I just thought the space looked empty and I wanted to add wings because I thought they would look cool, but he doesn't canonically have wings. I'm sorry if anybody was looking forward to that. Yeah, I think the hair came out pretty well. I think my critique is actually going to be pretty similar to the last one. Also, if anybody hears noise, it's Alex in the background. It's going to be pretty the same as the last one, which is just the underlying anatomy. I think could have made this piece a whole lot stronger. I think the folds, my idea of like thinking about the folds is better, but there's still a little bit, why is that there? I think I just like wanted to fill up the space. But that's kind of the summary of this one, I think, is if I did the anatomy a little bit stronger, like the torso, whoop, he's a little squished. He's a little Barbie dolled. Whenever you're drawing anatomy that you kind of, even if you stylize it, you still want to keep correct anatomy in mind. Just keep in mind the room for the organs. That's kind of an important thing. I think if I had that and then the arms kind of look like they're two different lengths. He's a little crooked. Getting that anatomy down would have made, just alone, like ignoring the clothing folds, just if the anatomy was better, this already would have been a much stronger piece. It's a lot of the times it's just that one thing that would really have made a difference in an artwork. And I think for me back then it was anatomy, and even nowadays, like I could be better at anatomy. Another Leo, I drew him a lot. So this is April 2010. I liked this one for a while too, and I like the idea of it. I like the flat coloring, I like the bold outlines, and I like the border. Adds a little bit of texture. It's simple, but I think it works. I don't know, just with the hair, when you have the thin lines going in, but then the thicker dark outlines, kind of adds a neat look, I think, in my opinion. Critique wise, it just really comes down to anatomy. I think I maybe should have spent a little bit more time on the sketch. I think I was just in a rush to get this idea down, kind of play around. The head is a little bit small, and I think for the placement of the collarbone, and I can't remember the name of it, but those, if you like tense your neck, you'll feel it, those little bits right there. I think I just kind of randomly placed them down. I think the placement of these could have been better thought out in terms of getting accurate placement. And his face looks turned to the side, but it's almost sort of drawn facing forward. Like the neck is going to show as it leads up into like your ear and past your jaw. I think that line should have shown a little bit more on here instead of having the jaw extend and then match with the neck and then lead that to the ear. And that's like a little nitpicky. Again, just looking for that one thing. The head was bigger. I think this would have worked much more. But otherwise, I think it's like a cute idea. Oh, this one's fun. This is still April. Wow, I did a lot in April. Right away, I really like just how different this one was. This wasn't a style of something that I normally did. This was an assignment for an art class. I like the concept of it. I think it's pretty neat. I got a little bit of movement going on. I like the breath. I like the pose. I think it's okay that the background's not overly detailed. It keeps kind of the focus on the character. I think that's okay sometimes. That can work. And the sketchiness of everything, I think it works. It just kind of depends on what you need. If you're going for a more fully polished thing, like even then I guess sketchy styles can still kind of work, but you'll probably most of the time maybe want to fill in those little gaps of white space or color in more carefully, especially with like the speed, like that he's moving. I think it's kind of working with the horizontal. Probably should have done a little bit maybe more horizontal elsewhere, but I don't know. I think the sketchiness works. It doesn't look too cluttered. Yeah, I agree. Again, I think just it comes down to a little bit of anatomy. It's like even not that super off. And I think the snowboard is a little bit weird in terms of perspective. The idea is that we're supposed to be seeing the underside and that's sort of the snow that's sticking onto it. I don't think that's made overtly obvious. I think I could have maybe pushed that a little bit more. I don't know off the top of my head how I would have done that. I need to look at snowboards and how feet look when they're on them. But I think if I had done that, that would have made it look a little bit better. And maybe something on this side. There's just a lot of weight over here. And I feel like if I'd put something on this side, maybe like another distant tree or like another something with a mountain, I don't know. I'd have to play around and see if that would work. The mountain I feel like could have been less of a stereotypical peak. I mean, there's so many things could like maybe work depending on like the style and like the impression you're trying to give across. I think this is like a fairly decent piece. I like what I was going for with the hair. I like the textures and the attempt at a different style. I mean, nobody looking at this would know that, but there was an attempt. There's some lips here. I didn't really do lips before. I think just it's nitpicks really with anatomy, and to get like some smoother coloring, I could have done a little bit more circle style coloring and shading, especially in the skin. I think in the hair, it's possible. I think the texture can work with the hair, but for the skin, maybe it could have gotten a little bit smoother. And the lips, the lips look a little weird. Probably should have looked at some references. But this is not too bad. I don't really have too much to say about these last couple ones. The nose maybe looks like it's kind of going in a different direction than because her head looks a little bit tilted down, but the nose, like you could have an upturned nose, but I don't think that looks like an upturned nose. I think it's just a nose kind of on a different plane. And I think this is supposed to be his ear right here. I probably would have defined the ear just a little bit more. And then for this hair, it's supposed to be black, but black hair is not black. Or at least for artists, we should not use just black. I think if I put in a little bit of like maybe some blues to match her shirt to kind of balance the blues, it's just to kind of liven up, because when you use straight black, it looks pretty flat. And I think if I had put something a little bit more in his hair, but yeah, maybe I'm not being like too rough. I feel like in critiques, I'm not really super harsh. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I like the little phrase of the hair. I think that's kind of cool. Something about the top of her hair and just the way that it sits. I feel like I could have done something a little bit more. I think refs would have helped But again, refs are not something that's required. Like, just because I'm saying like refs would help, refs would blah, blah, blah. Like, if you just want to draw and you don't want to like think, or if you just want to do whatever, like you don't need to use references. They're not a requirement. But if you want to improve your artwork or take your artwork in a certain direction, or if you need help, then use references. We're still in April. What is going on? I did a lot in April. I like the concept. I like everything kind of falling apart. And I think it was good that I did the shirt along with it, just so it's not top and bottom only. It's kind of like a little bit of everything. I also like the yellow glow. I don't know. I just think it's kind of cool. I think those are the main things I think that's working for it. But I think most of you guys could probably guess what I'm going to say about this anatomy. I don't know what's going on with the arms. It's really interesting that I drew it like that. I was trying really hard not to jump to just saying the arms. I wanted to get positives in first. Like the other bits of the anatomy are a little wonky too, but the arms just in particular. So I would say that would be the one thing, is like ignore the rest of the anatomy. Like get in shoulders and the arms for this particular piece. Like if I just did a ton of studies right after this of just arms, connecting it with the shoulders, or even just the arms themselves. It's helpful if you want to study a particular thing and how it interacts and have it interact with another thing. So if you want to practice eyes, sometimes it's even more helpful to not just draw eyes, but to draw the face with eyes on the face. Or if you want to draw shoulders, to also either draw the arms or the neck, or both the neck and the arms. Like understand how these pieces are connected with each other. But I think for this, it would be okay if I just did the arms, but because of how I connected it with the shoulders, mostly in the armpit, I would have told myself back then to study specifically the arms and how they connect with the shoulders. Possibly as like two separate sets of studying. Study arms and then study how the arms connect to the shoulders. That would be the one big thing that I would say about this. The other thing is this area, not the best anatomy, but it's not nearly as distracting as the arms. I also kind of like the face. I think the sketchiness works with this. I think the coloring matching that sketchiness, I think that's fine. Like obviously like the hands could be improved. The neck, how it connects is weird. I don't really know what's going on, but if I had to pick anything, it would 1000% be the arms. All right, so we're still in April. All right, so I think this was another prompt of probably sports, I'm guessing. The concept I had in mind for this one was to try and get this chick to be doing as many different sports as possible. Oh, I wanted to add a baseball glove instead of her hand. That's what I was missing. I like the concept. I actually think it's really funny. I think you can do a lot with it. I like the outfit. It's definitely a very sporty outfit. I like the concept of the pose. I don't know, just mostly the concept, and I think the wild hair is actually really funny and kind of adds to it. Like the fact that it's a ponytail with a backwards cap. I just kind of like that look for this. And obviously the attempt at a different expression aside from just generic smiling is a nice thing to see. So negatives, yes, the salad fingers. Definitely could have used a reference. Mostly I think this hand bothers me more so than this hand, because like that's you get it, that's a hand. This is, yeah, I still have a problem with like hands wrapping around something. For me, I think mostly it's the balance. Like, yeah, the anatomy is off, but I think the thing that kind of makes this more off to me is the balance. Like, she's not stable in terms of like holding herself up. She's not in like a proper running position where like when somebody is running, they're not otherwise tripping or falling over. Like there's gonna be a line that's sort of keeping you stable with gravity, and I don't really see that. She's tilting pretty hard to the right, and I think if she manages to catch the frisbee, which is probably spelled wrong, she would just topple over. She's a little much to one direction. It's 5 seconds. It is essentially like 5 seconds before disaster. But yeah, I mean, obviously the anatomy is off, but for me, I think the thing that I would say on this is the balance. But I think when you're practicing drawing somebody in awkward balancing positions, you're gonna end up practicing anatomy anyway. I think probably gestures of like gymnastics or other sports where they're very active and moving, that would have helped me in getting a good line of action. Isn't really the word. I don't know if there's a word for it, but just getting that line where she's not toppling over. Are we out of April yet? We're still in April 30th. More colored pencil art. Fun. Okay, I like the look of this one, just like the overall appearance of it. I think it looks pretty cool. I was into this for borders, just this sort of scratchiness look to it. The red hair, I think it's pretty bold. I think the wings look pretty cool. The fade from the dark blue into the light blue with her yellow glow. I don't know. I kind of like just the overall appearance of it. I think that's like my main positives here. Actually, I think I did some paint splatter to try and get some white dots. I don't know. I kind of like that idea too. So for negatives, the rose is like gone. I like the idea, but I wish this stood out a bit more for the rose, and then the anatomy, of course. I think the clothing folds are better here, especially on the skirt. There's some spots where they look a little bit weird, mostly like right here, but it's an improvement. But I think for me, it's mostly just this black rose, and then my yaoi hands again, it's the arms. I think if I had just done a lot of stuff with the arms, I could have done a lot. I think it's just a lot to point out like a ton of things, and it's like work on everything, and that's too much. It's not possible to practice so many things and get better at so many things. I think if you just hunker down and focus on a couple at a time, like 1 or 2 at a time, and then like move on to the next thing and just circle back eventually kind of thing, I think it would work much better. Alrighty, are we out of April? It's still April. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I used references for this one, and I don't actually remember if this concept is original or not. In terms of like, if I looked up a reference and I just copied a reference, or if I came up with the idea. I'm sure this is very much not an original idea. In any case, I do kind of like the idea of just sort of from that perspective of releasing the balloons into the air. I like that. You like the balloons? Yeah, I like the balloons too. And I think these are like really good hands. I know I used refs for these hands, and that's why they look so good in comparison to my previous hands. And I actually like the coloring on them, like the colors that I use and the way that I sort of mix them together. I like that a lot. And then the pencil for the outline makes it look extra soft, and I think that works. For the negative aspects, the hands still look a little bit off. Mostly this left one looks off to me here. It looks like I spent a little bit more time on this right hand. And then the other thing that's kind of distracting for me is how I shaded this balloon in particular. It just looks a bit off. I would need to maybe look at a balloon to double check, but just something about this highlight feels a little bit off to me. All my shading and coloring sort of matches because it's all scratchy, but it's all like scratchy in different directions. So like the balloons are like, there's like a semi half circle, and then the hands, it's like kind of cross hatching, and then the sky is mostly just like horizontal. And I think that's just a little bit much. I think if I had maybe 2 directions at most for coloring, it would have looked better. And obviously, again, for colored pencil, it looks much better if you color in little circles and just sort of take your time, but I'm not patient, so. And then the clouds are kind of not really visible. I don't know if it would have been better to make them a little bit more obvious or kind of have a better placement for them. I don't know. I feel like I'm being a little nitpicky on this one now because it's not too bad of a piece. I think that most of it that takes it away is really this hand. If I just took a little more time on this hand, it would have been pretty fine. So that would be my one thing, would be this hand. And if I had to pick 2 things, then I would say this balloon with the hand. We're in May. This is like an April 2010 critique stream. The context for this one was that my friends liked the blue one a lot. There wasn't a story behind it, so I thought to do like a prequel piece to it. So she's discovering this rose, and the rose is glowing yellow, and that's why she's glowing yellow. The wings are sort of gradually appearing as she's approaching it. I don't know. You can make it whatever story you want about it. Again, I kind of like the border. I like the gradient shading into the center. Helps bring the focus to her. I don't know how I feel about the gradient being just like straight up and down, or I guess from side to side, because you have like this empty space right here. So maybe had she been, I get that I wanted her to kind of be leaning into the rose, but maybe I could have had her body bend a little bit more into a C to kind of take up a little bit more of that space. But I like the wild hair. I like the faded wings. I like the rose. I think the rose stands out so much more now. I like the expression, but yeah, I think for me, just this empty space feels a little bit weird. The anatomy is slightly better, but then now like this neck area and how her head is just sort of doesn't feel connected to her neck, and the collarbone is kind of in the wrong spot. Mostly the neck for me here. And then the torso is a bit long. Did I miss the explanation of the legs? They're under a very long skirt, so I didn't have to draw them. But I think the hands are better here. They're less yaoi hands. But I think for me, most of this is like the shoulders and the neck. And I think that's like the main part. The folds are a little bit weird, but I don't know. This for me is the most distracting, and then like the lack of space. There's just so much empty space here. If she had just curved a little bit more, I think that would have made this better. This was a self-portrait. I think I did a really good job. Like that scarf and the shirt, hella. I love how I drew that. Mostly the scarf. Yeah, I like this one. I like the hair. The pose is simple, but I think it's fine. Looks nothing like it, but I love the color. Yeah, it doesn't really look like me all that much. Kind of like the purpley glow all around. I think it adds a good balance because the purple is otherwise just on the scarf and the shirt. And I think it works with the pants, having that purple glow there. I like that. Who has the time to draw curly hair? Okay? Nobody. I mean, back in the day, I used to draw myself with just like this. like a squiggle of hair. That was my hair. I mean, obviously I didn't do it here, but when I did do my curly hair, I just did like a... There's a couple of things that stand out to me in terms of negatives. One is the anatomy, the extremely long arm, the placement of the hand is kind of a nitpick, I think. Just something about everything looks a little bit off. And that sounds a bit mean, but I don't know, like this back leg looks too long. Like it's, especially compared to this leg, like they're two different lengths of leg. The shoes, like there's... Oh, I can zoom in here. I forget I have that power. I mean, the shoes, like you can see that there's detail attempts, but they're kind of invisible. I get that they're black shoes, but you're still gonna see things. And I think the details are a bit lost. Same with the pants, but more so with the shoes. I think the shoes, like if you just look at it from afar, they just look like blobs. The shading here on the face is, I think, a little distracting, leaving the white. It looks a little strange, the highlights. The placement is obviously off. The cheek is gonna be up here, not down here for the highlight. But the only white parts are like right here. And there's like a little bit here. It doesn't really feel balanced. And then this fold right here on the shirt, it like gets super dark right here. It's again folds. I didn't know what I was doing. And the same with the pants, like the folds are kind of, if you can even see them, there's a concept of folds there. Oh, I know this is the crotch. There's gonna be folds around the crotch. Oh, this is the bottom of the pants. Like I know that the material bundles up at the bottom of the pants and that causes folds. Like that's good that I'm thinking that. But what's not good is that I'm not like researching it to try and understand it better and to like take what I know, but then also like look up references essentially. But yeah, I think this is like a nice piece though. I really like the coloring. I like the details. I think the detail balance works. Like even though this is really detailed, like the pants and shoes like still have some stuff that makes it a nice balance. And then with the purple everywhere and the hair being just whoosh. I don't know. I think it's fine. I think that works. But yeah, the anatomy mostly with this, the arm and the shirt, losing that stuff. Ooh, okay. So this is, I think, not my first watercolor, but definitely one of my earliest watercolor pieces. This is June of 2010. The concept is not mine. I actually got this from a watercolor tutorial book that maybe some of you might recognize. It's actually kind of a popular book. I still kind of like a lot of aspects of it. Like this part right here, that looks wicked. Like the folds and how I colored that, like it's probably a happy accident. What's this book? I can go grab it really quick because I have it. So this is the book, Dreamscapes, Creating Magical Angel, Fairy, and Mermaid Worlds with Watercolor. So this was one of the pictures in there that I just sort of copied. Obviously the other original artist did a significantly better job than I did, but this was still, I think, good practice for me. I like the background. I used masking fluid with this, which is why I was able to get that background. And the wings are a little, the first word that came to mind is goopy, but it's not like goopy, but it's just like irregularly colored. It's not that it's not smooth, because there's obviously textures over here, but I either changed up how much water, how much paint I used, but it's just not the same and it doesn't really match. The white splatters are nice, but I think that I did a little too much and it's a little distracting. But I think I did a good job mostly with the skirt. A lot of the stuff that I like is also kind of not mine. Like I like the pose, even though it's simple, but I think I kind of failed a little bit with the head and the hair. Just a little bit too thick of like a strand right here, which is supposed to be something that's thin. I think this was like a happy accident with the skirt down at the bottom. All right, it's hard to say too much about this because like the concept isn't mine and I'm still trying to learn watercolors, but I think mostly the thing that's distracting for me is the hair and the wings, and there's just way too many splatters. Overdid the splatters, but I like the texture. I think it's a little bit flat here too. That was because of the masking fluid. I could have done a little bit more, I think, to give the hair a little bit of volume. Okay, this was when I was getting into college. So this is June, another colored pencil piece. And what to say about this one? The concept is interesting. I think there's certainly something to it. It certainly feels threatening, and I kind of like that that's a little bit different than what I normally did. I like the idea of putting in the lightning in the background. Hair being kind of snaky fits the mood of it. Just coming for the viewer. That's, I think, most of the positives I can say. I think I have some more negatives than I do positives, but I don't actually, I just like this. I got bored and felt like playing with my Prismas again. I'm not a fan of this drawing. Wish I had my colorless blenders with me so it wouldn't look so much like shit. I mean, I wouldn't call it shit. I feel like that's a little harsh. For me, yeah, the coloring is a little bit distracting, but that's less so blaming the colorless blender to magically fix it by burnishing, and more so just how I actually colored. With colored pencils, if you don't have a colorless blender, or I wouldn't recommend using white for burnishing because that changes the color, or mineral spirits, or rubbing alcohol. Like if you don't have these other tools with you, you only just have the colored pencils themselves, you can still pull off a pretty good piece. it just involves a lot more patience. So instead of just wide strokes and like even cross-hatching, because I did try and cross-hatch to try and hide the white of the paper, circles. It's literally just little circles and a crap ton of patience. I think that's like the most distracting bit. Obviously the hand is probably the next distracting bit because it's, I don't know, the values are pretty flat, and I think that's not really helping something with that seems to want dramatic lighting, especially with the lightning in the background. I feel like this could have had a lot more of a darker tone to it. The lightning really does stand out a bit too much. I think I probably would have benefited from using a reference and or just not feeling like I needed to outline it in black. I don't think the lightning should have been outlined. I think it would have been fine if it had just been left white and then maybe some of that glow around it. Like your eyes go straight to it because it's so much of a contrast difference. Because the sky is so dark, because the lightning is so light, your eyes go straight there. Whereas I think I probably wanted the focus to be more around the face. That just didn't happen because of that contrast difference. So that's a topic we haven't talked about yet. I've been talking so much about anatomy. But yeah, so even with the wonky hands, I think this piece would have been much better. The forehead, yeah, sure, the forehead. Even with the wonky anatomy, if I had just done better values on this, if I had maybe done a gradient from like dark to light here, so the focus keeps going back to where I want it to be, which is her forehead, and then maybe had a little bit more dramatic lighting in the hand, basically had like this halo coming towards her forehead. And I think it still could have worked even with the lightning, but the lightning is so stark, like white-black contrast. Like that's the most contrast you're ever going to get is a white and a black, and that's what I have. So I think that is way too distracting. So if I were to pick one thing, it would be the contrast in the values to the black outline. It's definitely pretty close there. Like it's still, because it still would be eye distracting, so the contrast has got to be higher. So I would say if I pick one thing, it's contrast and values, and the next thing would probably be the outlining of the lightning. And then I tried to like fill in the empty space because I knew it looked empty with like rocks and grass, and I think that helped. I think it was good that I did that. The rule of thirds might have helped me a little bit better. Things are a little bit off rule of thirds wise, but I don't think it's the end of the world. All right, so this is July. I'm definitely not going to finish 2010. I honestly thought I was going to need extra artworks because I wasn't going to make it through. Okay, so this one was another early tablet sketch, so I still was not really familiar with the tablet, still trying to learn, so I'm playing around. There's just so much noise now with you getting on a new trash bag. For people who like trash bag ASMR, this is for you. Okay, so I'm still trying to learn the tablet. I like the idea, I like the hair, I think it looks really pretty. I like the shooting stars and the purpley background. For negatives, I think the thing for me that stands out the most is the values. I did try and do a little bit where this hair down here is obviously darker. I think I could have just pushed it a little bit more. I could have pushed it a little bit further. Like there's times where you want like softness and like very little values, but I think it's just too distracting to have like this really dark sky. There's like the imbalance issue where I don't really have really dark hair. Her face and neck are kind of almost blended together. But yeah, I think right here the thing that hurts this piece the most is just the values. Like her face goes into her neck. There's a little bit here that's just kind of mistakes from not understanding the tablet, like her skin kind of being colored in to her hair, and I'm gonna forgive that just because I know that it's an early tablet piece and I had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, mostly the values here. And then the moon's like fuzziness is a little strange. I guess I was going for a glow. I don't think it's inherently wrong. It's just a little weird looking, but yeah. I think if I were to say one thing for this, it would just be the values. I actually got a lot of critiques on here because I submitted it to a critique group, so people kind of already did all the hard work for me. Anyway, I think this is kind of a nice piece. I like the clothing folds here. I obviously had a reference, so that helped. I like the hair. The texture is kind of nice. And I like the sort of depth that I got with the eyes. So I think those are the strong aspects. Like I really like the sleeve. I think the sleeve is really working. So things that I think could be improved is I think I could have just gone darker. Her hair and eyes and eyebrows are so dark. And like even right here, there's like an outline with the mouth and like right there, like right there. It's just, there's a lot of dark and her clothes don't really emulate that. And I think I should have added some more darker shading. Folds over here are a little bit less strong than the folds here. I think I could have done a better job. Again, I had a reference though. It's hard to say without the reference with here right now. I do like the strands of hair right here. The eyes are obviously not in the correct position. I do know who this person is. I was friends with them in high school, and I do know that this is not exactly what her face looks like. There's certainly parts that match her face, but just from memory, I know that there are quite a few things that I could have done more correct, and I obviously know better methods nowadays on how to do portraits, and I think fixing the early mistakes of things not lining up would have helped a lot. The hand is a little distracting once you finally reached it. I think right now most of the time is spent looking at the face because that's where the starkest value differences happen, which is good because that's what you want for a portrait. But then once you finally see the hand, you're like, oh, she spent a little bit less time on that hand. So a little bit more love on that hand I think would have helped. But yeah, I think it's mostly just balancing out the contrast, getting the initial sketch correct, more correct, since that's what I was aiming for, I think would have helped this piece. So this will be the last one then that I'll critique, and that's kind of all we have time for anyway. So this is August 2010, more tablet practice. I said, please ignore the hands. I has none ref and I rushed, so equals the shit. So we'll ignore the hands then, since that was a request by the artist, and we'll just critique everything else. All right, so I like the concept. Because I know the characters, that kind of makes me a little bit biased because she has like this inner part of herself that is essentially another character. The idea of that is kind of neat. Because I know the characters, having these two on opposite sides with sort of dramatically different colors is a little confusing. I don't think it fits the theme of the story because all of these guys are on the same team and there's like no villain in this picture, but it kind of comes across that way. So because I know the background of this, that part's a little bit confusing. This is a new hairstyle coloring I was practicing, and I think it kind of works in certain spots, but other spots it's just a little bit like really random and nonsensical. Like I wasn't thinking about following the direction of how the hair is flowing. I think it comes out the best here on his hair because we don't see the top of the head, because if we did see the top of the head it would probably look like this, where there's not really a spot where the hair is growing from. It's just sort of coming up from like above the hair, and you can even see I accidentally didn't hide some of the layer. Can I even show that actually? If we like zoom in here, like you can see, oh, my face is in the way. You can see some leftover highlights that I forgot to either erase or lock into this. So the hair isn't really coming out of anything. It's just sort of like there, and I don't think that looks good, but I like the idea of it. I think it looks neat. And this is again Alex in the background. I have to keep reminding people because this is for YouTube too. But yeah, I think it works better over here, and over here her hair is just going in wild crazy directions, not really following anything. You have like hair going in ways that like don't look right, and I think and there's like again more spots where I forgot to hide things. But I like the idea of that style of coloring the hair, and I think it would have worked much better if it had roots and came out of the head. What else? Again, the clothing folds and anatomy nitpicks, his neck and shoulders. Once you actually like you remove these two characters in front of him, like there's a lot going on here with this guy that could be improved. His neck is definitely too long and it doesn't properly connect to his head. His head's just kind of there and there's a neck going to it, and the shoulder is not really working. So there's quite a few anatomy mistakes. I think this is a mistake I see commonly in a lot of artists, but it's an understandable mistake, and I've certainly fallen into this trap too, which is too much focus on the face. For a lot of artists, we like drawing faces. Faces are something that our eyes are naturally drawn to, and something we find aesthetically pleasing, and faces are important. They tell stories. So oftentimes you'll see faces, especially eyes, more so than anything, be the strongest aspect of somebody's artwork, and then everything else sort of fails to reach that same level of height because the artists don't practice those other things as much. Things like the neck and the shoulders, things like the hands, things like the torso and stuff like that. Like they're not seen as important to us, whether it's a conscious decision or not. Because I spent so much time focusing on the faces, everything else was sort of left behind. And I'm not allowed to comment on the hands. That was the instructions of the artist. So we're gonna leave it at that. So I think it's a neat idea. I think I could have pushed the theme a little bit better to better convey what I wanted to, and the anatomy and the hair. So if I had to pick one thing in this, I'd probably actually say the anatomy. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to call it here for the critiquing. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this stream. I know it was a little bit different. Hopefully you guys were able to learn a little bit of something from it. I mean, I think it's still helpful for me too to look over my old artworks, because it's just a nice reminder to both, one, see where I have come from. All your old artworks, even if you find them super embarrassing, you don't want to share with anybody, they're a part of your history. You are now where you are in your artworks because of these old artworks. If they didn't exist, you wouldn't be where you are now. So I am grateful for my old artworks. And I'm glad that I learned things from them since then, and I'm glad to go over them now, because that's like, oh, maybe I should look more into what I'm doing now, because there's obviously some of these mistakes that I'm still doing, and there's places I can still certainly improve, and just there's techniques that I might want to approach again. A lot of this stuff was colored pencil, which was nice to see. A lot of traditional arts and character pieces that I just don't really do as much anymore, and so I don't know, it just kind of gives me ideas if I were to do this sort of stuff again. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. And yeah, thanks for watching. And if you'd like to see some more old artworks, I do have an entire playlist of sketchbook videos, actually, going over lots and lots of sketchbooks from fairly recent to quite old. So I'll put a link in the description for those watching on YouTube, and for everybody watching on Twitch, you can just go to my YouTube channel. I believe I have faith in you to go to my YouTube channel, hit on playlists, click playlists, and you'll see the sketchbooks in there somewhere. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on the stream today. Yeah, but happy holidays, and I will see you guys later. Bye. I know Star Wars. Very good. Very good Star Wars knowledge. My Little Pony, not so much, but Star Wars. I know about Star Wars. And I still don't understand how nobody knows what I talk about when I say the dogs. It's so obvious. Star Wars giant robot dog things. You know what I'm talking about? That's the first result. It's the first result. Google knows what I'm talking about. The dogs. Oh my god. They look like dogs. Look at that. They look like dogs. People have thought of this aside from me.